let's start at the very beginning of this tragic, weird little story, okay? The lineup. It came out, Kira Walsh was named. I was surprised. I didn't think it was the right call. I thought Katie Zellum should have started. I thought she had a great game against China, but she's back in. She's obviously the absolute fan favourite from Wiegman. Understand, she's one of the best players in the world. Cool, absolutely. But I don't think she delivered today. I don't think she was able to, but I don't think she delivered today. Rach, thoughts? Tell me. Go on. Lay in.
I agree. I think I don't think she should have started, or they shouldn't have played the formation they played. It's like they tried to play similar to what they did against China, but just plop Walsh in, and that didn't work. She's used to playing more of a defensive role, and they felt like there was too much of a gap between her and Stanway, and it just wasn't really working. So, like, at least the last time when you had the double pivot, there was an awful lot more freedom for either of those two players to move up or back. They were able to provide more options for Lauren James, and that wasn't happening because Lauren James was just marked out of the game. And credit has to go to Nigeria because, yes, England played poorly, and I think a lot of that is down to that setup that they tried to do. But equally, Nigeria capitalised. And the fact that they tried to go with a similar lineup that didn't work, it just kind of played into Nigeria's hands a little bit. I thought they man-marked really well. They marked England's dangerous players really well, particularly Lauren James. I think it was Alozie who marked her. She was brilliant. So many players to point out. Kanu, Ajibade, Ndozi in goal. Like, I thought they were excellent tonight, all over the park. They were, every 50-50 challenge they came out of. Even like when the Lionesses would break with a ball, they would just be able to kind of step in and like almost bosh them off the ball a little bit. It made them look weak, and just kind of be like, nope, that's mine again, and take off back down the pitch. I thought they were brilliant. I thought their game plan was really good, and the game was like a little bit kind of stop-starty, which allowed Nigeria to maintain that level of pressure all the way through the game. I thought the sending off, which I know we'll touch on, changed the game for Nigeria, actually, weirdly. I think we all thought Lauren James going off was the death knell for England. And actually, it was almost like Nigeria didn't know how to handle that or capitalise on that. And by the time we got to extra time, England were just playing for penalties, which is such a risky move. But the way Nigeria were playing, it was kind of the only thing they could do. They had to sit back and just absorb the pressure. So yeah, like a weird game in that, like, yeah, we're through and it's great, but you're like, Jesus Christ, that was a hard way to do it and a very lucky way to do it.
I think if we just stay in the confines of the normal time, what happened in normal time? Because I think the crowd, the atmosphere was completely flat in the stadium. From the minute the whistle blew, it was silent. You could hear. I was up in the press pit, and that's a fair whack up into the heavens. And you could hear the communication from the players on the pitch. There was a sense of, the USA and Sweden have just happened. Everyone's a little bit nervy about the penalty shootout type situation occurring. It was the first knockout game. Yeah, we'd had a pretty good one against China, but everyone came into this thinking, the underdogs are smashing it this year. Anything could happen. And there was a flatness. And I think that kind of resonated with the players because it felt like a flat performance. And I think Nigeria, as this kind of, I say underdogs, but they are, I'd say, one of the titans coming into this. They've had an absolutely fantastic tournament. Brought it to England. I mean, in the 16th minute, there was two saves that Mary Earps had to make. One from the edge of the box, an absolute rocket that I think she just about got fingertips to and tipped it onto the crossbar. I think she got fingertips to it. And then the second one at the near post as well, which another one she had to literally claw out the back of her net to make sure that we stayed in the game. I think Mary Earps, obviously she picked up player of the match, and I don't think that was probably the right call. I think Alex Greenwood had a really good game. I think Mary Earps did have some crucial saves. She definitely kept us in it.
Or any of the Nigerian players.
Or any of the Nigerian players who'd put in an absolute bloody shift. I mean, Ndozi had an absolute killer game as well. But yeah, I think Nigeria definitely had the better, more crucial chances, but they just weren't able to convert them. Yeah, through Earps and maybe sometimes through, not being able to just, that final touch wasn't the best one. But if we'd have walked away from this game being the losers, having been knocked out of the World Cup, I don't think I could say that was an unfair result. It just felt like Nigeria really did have the run of the mill. But let's talk about Lauren James. I know we don't want to talk about it, and I think we want to touch on it sensitively and we want to do it in the right way, because I appreciate she is 21. Adding the context to this, she was frustrated by the fact that she was being man-marched pretty much throughout the entire game. She wasn't getting possession. No, she is a role model. We have to appreciate that. She shouldn't have done what she did. I mean, it was obviously an intentional step on the back. It was so obvious and so blatant that I was very surprised actually when she got the yellow card in the first place. I did think that that was going to be a straight red, and VAR obviously took it back and decided that it was a straight red, and I think that was the right call. That was, it was so intentional. And I think we're kind of waiting to hear whether that's going to be a one. Well, it's definitely a 1 game ban, but it could be a 3 game ban, but that has to be confirmed. But I mean, Rach, I mean, what were you? It felt like a moment of madness. It felt like a complete kind of she'd had such a phenomenal tournament. The China game seemed to be her kind of like, even though we know that she's incredible on the world stage, it seemed to be like her moment of like, here I am, I'm Lauren James, I'm fucking incredible. And then all of a sudden, 90 minutes later in this game, she is, I'm hopefully not going to be painted as a villain, but obviously has to appreciate that that is not acceptable. Yeah.
I think if you remember when we spoke about the China game, I mentioned there was a point in it when she intentionally kicked the ball out when China had a corner and it hit a photographer. And
yes, you did.
Yeah, and it's just those little moments of petulance that need to be better managed by both her and I guess managers as well. Because even that foul itself tonight, like even the way that she got up off the player, she got up to kind of try and almost harm her a little bit, the way she pulled her feet up and then followed it up with a stamp. So if it's anything less than 3 games, I'd be very surprised, because we've seen red cards in the tournament already that have been, and look, yes, she's young, and this is, I'd like to think she's going to learn from this and not do something like this before. We've seen it happen in football before with young players when they're making their mark on the world stage. But I think in circumstances like that, it wasn't like a challenge. It wasn't like you're in the heat of the moment trying to get a ball off someone and you've just come in reckless and caught them wrong, which is kind of what happened in the previous red card that got the 1 game ban and upgraded to 3. So I can't see it not being upgraded to 3, because it was an intentional act. Stupid, disappointing. And yeah, I think the fact that England went through means that it won't be the kind of maybe
defining
get as much
moment.
Yeah, and that's probably just as well for her, because we've seen how the media and fans can turn on a player for something like that. And yes, it's wrong, and she's been duly punished for it, and she will be duly punished for it, and it has been called out by everyone who watched the game. But at the same time, I think if England had lost, I think it would have been painted as Nigeria beat 10-player England, which I think would have been an unfair reflection of the match had Nigeria won, because Nigeria were just as likely to beat an 11-player England. But I feel like Lauren James would have been made the scapegoat and the villain for the loss. So it's probably just as well for her that England didn't lose. But yeah, it's a real shame that her tournament, that will be what she's remembered for, I think, now in this tournament, because she's unlikely to feature again.